He'll make it for sure. Now that's why I backed him on Tap Touch.
Hey, Luke.
Yes, Gene Simmons?
He's probably the best when it comes to this stuff.
Thanks, Gene.
You've got the touch. You got the touch. You got the power. Got the touch? Choose Tap Touch. Better your bet. Download the app today.
Chances are you're about to lose. For free and confidential support, call 1-800-858-858 or visit gamblinghelponline.org.au.
Hoops Heaven proudly brings to you Basketball Hustle.
Ellis fumbled the ball. 2 on the shot clock. Goes up a prayer. Yes! As he was falling to the ground, it's a 3. He shot it literally from the hip.
Definitely a highlight.
Here come the Billikens. 4 on 2. McCall. Ellis. Left corner.
We're missing out.
Bang! From way down under. Cody Ellis.
Now it's time for another episode of Hoops Heaven's Basketball Hustle.
Hello and welcome to Hoops Heaven's Basketball Hustle. And Cody, we've got our final 4 teams and they just happen to be the top 4 teams at the end of the regular season. But it was a fun week to get to this point. So the play-in tournament is done and now we've got almost 2 weeks to prepare for the playoff series between Melbourne United and the Perth Wildcats and then the Illawarra Hawks and the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix. So there's a lot for us to get through on this week's show. As always, we're here thanks to Tab Touch and Hoops Heaven, and Cody will also get your thoughts on the trade deadline moves that we saw, get your thoughts on probably a perfectly way for the 36er season to end because it promised so much and in the end they couldn't quite finish the job. We've got the Xavier Cooks drama or news or unfortunate circumstances to talk about. Adam Forde, probably not surprisingly, is now gone as the coach at the Cairns Taipans, and we've also got to give our reaction to the NBL awards that we saw last Monday night as well. A lot for us to get through, Cody. We'll get through this hour very quickly and then we'll have another preparation show next week before that playoff series. I'm Chris Pike, but the man everybody's tuning to hear from, the former Sydney Kings and Illawarra Hawks forward, Cody Ellis. Good to be back, Cody. A lot for us to get through.
Yeah, lot to get through. Lots of fun talking points and lots of fun happenings around the league and yeah, I mean both leagues really. So yeah, looking forward to diving deep into them.
All right, a lot for us to get through. What's surprised you the most over a couple of weeks since we did our last show? So we've seen none of the NBA trade moves were bigger than obviously Luka and AD, but we did see some big moves. And then I think the Xavier Cooks news is something that shocked everybody. And then we've got the final 4 teams now in the NBL. What's surprised you the most over the past couple of weeks?
Oh, yeah, probably a couple of things. I think the Xav thing is probably the biggest thing. Yeah. And I mean, that kind of just helped derail the Kings season,
yes.
Which again kind of summed up their season as well.
Did,
so, yeah, look, that was pretty big. But yeah, look, obviously everything happening in the NBA and the trade deadline and everything that happened right up until and after that Doncic trade. Yeah, just a lot happening in a short space of time. So, yeah, I mean, some pretty cool little duos in the NBA now that are going to be fun to watch moving forward once they figure out how to play together, and looking forward to that.
All right, so there's a lot for us to get through in the NBL, so we will get to that shortly. But let's start with the deadline moves that we saw in the NBA. So on our last show, we were still processing the news of Luka and AD swapping teams. They've now landed at their new club. So we've seen Luka make his debut just before the All-Star break with the Lakers, and it looks like it could work out pretty well based on the early signs. And AD also looked great in his first game for the Mavericks, and then unfortunately, true to form, if you follow his career, he got injured pretty quickly as well. What do you make of the way things have started for both of them?
Yeah, look, I mean, upsetting to see AD go down. Yeah. He's had a really good season so far with LA, and looked like he was fitting in really nicely with the Mavs lineup. And I mean, groin injury, I believe it is, and I mean that's probably going to be him for most of the season, which is unfortunate. And you're right though, fairly true to form for AD, which is upsetting. But look, I mean, Doncic and LeBron are going to be fun to watch. It's going to be interesting to see how they kind of split the ball in their hands and what that's going to look like after All-Star break. But look, two super high IQ players that I feel like can still work off the ball fairly well. So it's going to be a fun little team to watch, and lots of good little pieces that they've put together.
Yeah, so clearly the Lakers had to find a big to replace AD.
Yeah.
What did you make of firstly, that they were willing to move on Dalton Knecht, who I think he was your pick for Rookie of the Year this start of the year from memory.
Yep.
Were you surprised that they were willing to move him on? And then what did you make of the fact that the trade for him and Mark Williams got rescinded?
Yeah, look, it's a tough one with Knecht because they've almost got an identical, just 2 years older player. So it's a tough one. It's not overly surprising. The way Austin Reeves is.
You go for in that first game after the trades, was it 50?
No, it wasn't. It was like
45?
45, 7 and 7 or something like that. So I mean, he's been unbelievable for LA, and Dalton is basically another version of that.
Yes.
So not overly surprised that they traded him, but to go for Mark Williams, who's played 80-odd games in 3 years, was the surprising one.
Yeah.
They've gone from an absolute superstar in AD who gets injured every second game to not a superstar in Mark Williams who gets
hurt too.
it's basically the same timeline.
And clearly it looks like he just didn't pass his physical, which the Sydney Kings know all about.
Yes, exactly. So, look, very very odd one. And then, you see players back to where they were, and you see Dalton Knecht sitting on the Lakers bench,
Very awkward, very awkward.
Not too happy, which is not overly surprising.
No.
It's one of those things that you don't really see from the trade deadline.
No.
It's not often that happens, that the trade gets rescinded and the players have to go back to where they just got traded from. But it's got, look, I mean, I'd be pretty upset if you had to go back to a team that had traded you away. And
in fairness, doesn't have a role for him, really.
No.
Still do they because of Reeves,
Yeah, so it's a tough one. It's a tough situation, but he's got to stick it out now. So
yes. What do you think of Jimmy Butler of the Warriors? Does that have a chance to make them a contender?
I think we've seen it already that some of those games where before this happened, Golden State losing, I think they've kind of come back and made some big plays and got a couple good wins with him in the lineup. Just having that extra playmaker is huge for them.
There's a chance, not quite the same level, but similar to see Steph working off with how he did with Cadee. It has the potential to be something similar.
I think so. You're right, not at all the level of KD, but I do think it's going to work. Just depends how long Jimmy's happy in Golden State, because it's, again, in true to form fashion, he ends up being pretty happy for a year or so, and then something upsets him and he spits the dummy and ends up just basically forcing the team to trade him away. So it's going to be interesting to see how that goes, because him and Draymond is going to be an interesting dynamic. So but I mean, look, I'm excited for it. It's going to be fun to see, because usually come playoffs, that's when Jimmy turns up. So pairing him with Steph is going to be fun to see.
Yeah, well, we've seen that he can lead a team to a championship, haven't we? Do you feel for Dennis Schroeder? He finds a new team seemingly every week at the moment. He's landed at the Pistons. Let's hope he might stay there for a little while.
Yeah, I mean, he's just it's got to be frustrating when you get. I mean, he got traded to 3 or 4 different teams in 24 hours. Yeah. So it's not ideal, but that's part of what the trade deadline is. And look, he's someone that can make an impact on a team. Yep. So I think.
Well, you even saw that at the World Cup when Germany won the World Cup. Yep. He was probably their best player.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And obviously the NBA is a different ball game, so it's tough. But look, I expect him to stick around with Detroit for a while now. Bit of a younger core group, so I think to have a bit of a guy that's been around the league for a while, and knows the league and understands it a bit, and just kind of teaching the young boys a bit is going to be good for him and the Pistons.
What do you make of Khris Middleton leaving the Bucks? You go back a couple of years, he was a really important player on that championship team that they won. Are you surprised that they moved him on?
Yes and no. He's one of those guys that I thought would finish his career out in Milwaukee for sure, but he just hasn't been healthy or anything like that. In recent times, I thought it was a strange, just straight up swap basically for Kyle Kuzma, and it was just, it didn't make a whole lot of sense both ways. But I mean, I guess they're thinking Kuzma's got a lot longer left in his legs, and you know they are kind of that like for like player. So yeah, I mean,
you make a good point. I don't necessarily think it makes either team better.
No,
They're just basically swapping a guy to play the same sort of role.
Basically the same role, which I get, but it's also a tough one with a guy in Khris Middleton who, you know, helped lead them to a championship and that kind of a thing. So yeah, bit of an odd one, but the Bucks are probably looking more towards the future than right now, I think.
Last one. What'd you make of the Nets dumping Ben Simmons, getting out of his contract, which I'm sure they're delighted about, and with him landing at the Clippers?
Yeah, look, not surprised that Brooklyn did that. I'm surprised it hasn't happened sooner, to be honest with you. Sign him with the Clippers. Yeah, look, it's going to be an odd situation. I mean, they're pretty stacked with talent and guards as well, but it's just one of the extra legs on the saga that is Ben Simmons at the moment, and never really know until we see him healthy if we ever do again. So it's, I mean, look, he's one of those guys that if he can get his mind right, he can get his body 100% healthy, then he'll make a big impact like he has in the past. But until then, I mean, it's just kind of a bit of a nothing thing.
Spending time with Patty Mills though, now on the same team, does that help his cause to end up playing for the Boomers? Do you think?
Who knows? Who knows? Honestly, I don't know if BA would even want him part of it.
That was my next question. Would the Boomers even want him to be part of their system?
Especially when thinking about it, it's probably we've seen the last of kind of that group that helped build the culture in Joey and Patty. Yeah. And then if you bring in someone like Ben who hasn't been part of that at all, who has put his hand up and said, yeah, I'm in, and then bowed out at the last minute multiple times. And I'm not overly sure if that's something that group would want in and around that core. So I'm not sure. Unless Patty can get in his ear and really start to mould him a bit differently, then I would probably say no.
Yeah. All right, Cody. A lot for us to get through. So a lot of talking points across the NBL. We'll focus a lot on the playing games that we've seen, but a lot of things, talking points. We'll get to expand on some of these this week, and whatever we don't get to this week, we'll come back to next week. But let me run through these, and you can give your quick thoughts, and then we can expand after the break. Any of the award winners surprise you in the end? If you quickly glance your eyes over that, then we had the shocking news. I mean, there's no other way of putting it, that Xavier Cooks has tested positive, and he got stood down for the rest of this season, and who knows now how much longer he'll have to be suspended for. Adam Forde now has gone as coach of the Cairns Taipans. A couple of guys you know pretty well, and has spent a fair bit of time playing, well, in some cases with, and a lot of games. Jason Cadee, Clint Steindl are now into retirement. We've got the Hawks and Melbourne United already had a week to sit back and wait to find out who they're playing, and it turns out it's the Wildcats taking on Melbourne United, and then we've got the Phoenix taking on the Hawks, and then the 36ers, they knocked out the Kings, unsurprisingly, given what's going on in Sydney, and then they blew it in the 36ers fashion against the Phoenix. What are your quick thoughts on all of that, Cody? And we'll expand on some of them later.
Yeah. Look, award winners, not overly surprised by any of them. You know, I think there was a couple that were a bit of a toss of the coin, but, you know, probably everyone that won, absolutely deserving. The Zave news, still trying to wrap my head around that one, which is an interesting one. And again, like I said before, just helped derail the Kings season in typical fashion for them at the moment too. 40 gone at Cairns, not super surprising. We touched on this a few weeks ago. But with an interesting role, which is I'm sure something we'll touch on. Jason and Clint retiring. I mean, that's just making me feel older and older each day. But no, look, super happy for both of those guys.
They're both pretty much right in your age group, aren't they?
Yeah. So Jace is a year younger and Clint's a year older, I think. So smack bang in the middle of both of them. So look, the Hawks and United sitting back and not playing for 3 weeks sucks. That's, you know, it's something that, you know, this point of the season, you can't be doing that, because they'll come into those first games just not in any kind of form and feeling rusty. So league's got to figure a way around that. I'm not sure how, but Cats taking on United is going to be a fun series. Really looking forward to it. I think obviously Melbourne, happy hunting ground here in Perth, which is a big thing for them. But it's going to be a physical series, I would imagine.
Yes.
So I'm hoping that they allow some of that physicality to go on both ways, because it will just make for a better series as well. And then Sixers knocking out the Kings, and then just absolutely capitulating against the Phoenix is not overly surprising. I thought they were good against the Kings, and they have been all year, or at least this back end of the season. And then, to be up 20 at halftime and then just, fall in a hole, and then see them pointing fingers and blaming each other and yelling at each other. And like we spoke about, we were texting each other saying that it's just the absolute perfect way for them to bow out this year, unfortunately. So, look, lots happening, and looking forward to diving deeper into some of these.
All right, before we take our first break, let's talk about Xavier Cooks a little bit more. So we don't know much more detail except that he's tested positive for something. It's probably best we don't speculate on that. But, I mean, how surprised were you? I mean, that's the best way to start. I mean, how surprised were you when you found out? Because we saw that he didn't play that last game of the regular season against the Hawks. The Kings came out and said it was for personal reasons. Clearly something was going on, because afterwards Brian Goorjian said that he didn't want to talk about it because he wanted to respect his privacy, but he also indicated that he was very unlikely to be playing the next week in the play-in game, so he knew something was going on. But if you had to guess that this is what it was, I don't think you would have come to this conclusion.
No, not at all. And again, we were talking about it all, and we went immediately to what's happened in his family. Is everyone all right there? That kind of a thing. Gorge obviously knew exactly what was going on, which is not overly surprising, which is why he said that he wasn't going to be playing.
Yes.
But look, it's just it's a very I was shocked when I saw it. So it's just one of those things that you kind of never know. And I mean, he's done himself and his career a huge disservice, and it's a frustrating thing to see, and it's an upsetting thing to see from a former MVP as well.
Yeah.
So, look, is what it is, but it's going to be interesting to see what their punishment is. Because, like you said, from all reports, it's recreational drugs rather than performing enhancing.
Yeah.
And his team is going to work hard to get it down because of that, which is just an odd scenario anyway. It's just... But, I mean, look, who knows what the punishment will be, but whatever it is going to hurt his career. I mean, because now it's kind of tarnished his name a bit.
Yeah.
And that's, again, that's just a frustrating thing for someone who, was the face of the league for quite some time. And, like we said.
Well, we go back 12 months, and the signing of him to come back was the biggest thing that the Kings had done, and trumpeting that he's the highest paid NBL player ever. And this is how that first season ends. Yeah, so not ideal. And, you even go back to his MVP season where he led them to a chip as well, and then off to the NBA and played in the NBA, and then, like you said, back here is in the biggest contract ever signed, and look, not ideal. You mentioned what it does for his reputation. Is there a difference if it is recreational and say he's back playing in time for the start of next season? Yeah. Does that lessen the blow, or if he ends up having to sit out some or all of next season, is there a difference in what that does to his reputation?
I don't think so. And again, I'm not sure what all the rules are around it, whether once he gets, his sanctions, if it starts from that date or if it starts from the start of his next competition or what the deal is.
Yeah. You might be able to swing it where if you say that he's going to play, he would have been in our Boomers team for some tournament, you might be able to say he's suspended for that instead of NBL. Yeah. They might be able to find ways. Who knows? Yeah, I'm not sure. And we won't know until all of that's handed down. And it might take some time too.
I'm sure it will. So, but look, no, I think that it doesn't really matter what the outcome of that is. I think it's just kind of a bit tarnished and tainted at the moment, unfortunately. And it's one of those things that it won't go away. It's just going to linger on him constantly.
Well, it doesn't feel like there's any denying that he's guilty. It's just now a matter of trying to negotiate the penalty.
Yeah, pretty much. So. Which, again, I wasn't sure of. I was, you look at the track star in bowl that had that false positive. That, I mean, he was the next big thing out of a Australian track and field, and that came back as, tested positive, but it ended up being a false positive, but it didn't matter because, it's just already kind of tarnished his name, unfortunately.
And it derailed him for about 2 years.
It did. And it was especially in track and field, that's pretty much you done. So a little bit different with basketball. But yeah, look, I wasn't sure if that was going to be the same case there, if it was just they'd come back and they'd retested and it was, or if it was a false positive or what was going on with it all. But you're right. It sounds like that it was all fairly pretty legit and it came back as a proper positive result. And yeah, look, it's pretty wild. It's pretty crazy.
Last one on it. I mean, you've talked for the last 3 years now how much respect you have for him. Does it change your personal opinion of Xav?
Oh, look, not my personal opinion. No. And it's one of those things that silly mistake that would have happened in an instant and something that I'm sure he deeply regrets.
Do we underestimate how common this might be? I mean, I'm someone that's stuck at my desk all day every day, so I'm not out in this world. But do we underestimate how much this might be happening, and he's just a rare case that's actually been caught?
Look, quite possibly. I think that a lot of this goes on everywhere, not just in sports. Of course, So it's just one of those things. And if you're a guy like Xav, like you've got to be better than that. Just plain and simple, especially with the reputation you've got and how squeaky clean it was and all that and what you've done, and you're the face of one of the best leagues in the world and you've played in the best league in the world and that kind of a thing. I think it's just, and again, it's one of those things that would have just been a split second decision and just a silly one at that. And he's just one of the ones that got caught. Yeah.
All right, Cody, we'll get on to some more positive things after the break. We'll talk about the play-in tournament. We'll go through all of that after this break, after we hear from Tap Touch.
Sounds good.
He'll make it for sure. That's why I backed him on Tap Touch.
You got the touch. You got the power. Got the touch? Choose Tap Touch. Better your bet. Download the app today.
Imagine what you could be buying instead.
Okay, back on Hoop 7's basketball hustle this week. I'm here with Cody Ellis. Play-in tournament is done now, Cody. Before we go through each game individually, have we got the right two teams that ended up prevailing, the Phoenix and the Wildcats?
Yeah. Look, I think that it's only right that the top four are all through anyway. But yeah, look, I think the right teams got the job done for sure.
Yep. All right, let's work backwards. So let's start with the play-in game on Sunday. This was a crazy game, and as it was unfolding, it kind of ended up summing up both teams' season absolutely perfectly. So the Phoenix ended up beating the 36ers 85-75, and the Phoenix had an absolutely horrible first half. Their worst first half in franchise history, and it's kind of similar to the way they started their season when they went 0-5, and then they got things going. They had a really good second half, and they overran the 36ers. And again, for Adelaide, they promised so much. They showed us again how good they could be in that first half. They showed that their best is potentially the best of any team in the competition. And then, as we saw in the second half, their worst can be the absolute worst. How did you digest this one afterwards? Yeah,
look, it was a lot. It was a lot. And, tale of two halves, which we've seen lots of times already this season. But, look, it did. It summed up both these teams perfectly and how their seasons have gone. I think the Phoenix just came out not ready to go and just couldn't get any rhythm going and then was struggling defensively too. Yeah. And it was a really interesting first half. Adelaide, on the other hand, were awesome. They looked good. They were moving the ball defensively. They were kind of up and in and getting in lanes and pushing the ball and making shots and feeling good about themselves. And, you got Harold getting tip dunks and all sorts of stuff. So it's, and then obviously going to halftime and they swapped jerseys and came out and...
Well, going into halftime, once Davis hit that, it was more than a half-court shot on the halftime buzzer. I didn't see any chance of that game turning. I thought once something like that happens, that this team can't lose from there. Yeah. I mean, how does it change in the second half so significantly?
Well, they probably went into halftime thinking the same thing.
Probably, yep.
And then came out and just didn't play.
Sure.
And look, Southeast probably went into halftime and Josh King probably lit a rocket and, they figured some stuff out. And then, I think the job Owen Foxwell did on Davis in the second half, especially late in that fourth quarter, was just super impressive. Sure. Then you could see he was absolutely gassed. He was gassed. And then he took that tried to take that charge and ended up hurting his ribs from what it looks like.
Yeah.
So hopefully he's okay to go. But look, just defensively, I think Southeast were just unreal. Just took Adelaide out of their stuff. And I mean, they ended up just playing hero ball, really. And it was just a completely different looking Adelaide team that we saw in that second half. So
it's exactly what Mike Wells said afterwards. He said that everybody went completely inward once the pressure went up.
Yeah.
When the pressure's on, you need to go outward and get everyone else involved, but we didn't do it.
No, not at all. And even Davis just kind of constantly giving the ball a headache and just too many dribbles into a poor shot or, a late pass out to a poor contested three or, we saw one where he drove down the lane and kicked it to DJ in the corner who already might have been Sobey just on him already and had to shoot it because you're catching it with 2 seconds. Yeah. You got to let it fly. So it's just, it was a tough one for Adelaide, but, again, not overly surprised that we saw, both sides of how good and how bad Adelaide could be in the one game.
It did sum their season up, didn't it? I mean, even just look at the numbers. So the first half, they shot 44%, which is pretty good, but then it went down to 30 in the second half. They went 5 of 14 from 3 in the first half, 1 of 13 in the second, and they only had 4 turnovers in the first half, 11 in the second. Sometimes numbers do tell the whole story.
Yeah, they really do.
And in the end, only 30 points for the entire second half.
Crazy. Yeah, pretty crazy. So, yeah, for a team with that much talent and scoring ability, you shouldn't be putting up 30 and a half. No. So, look, all the credit to the Phoenix. They did an unbelievable job out of halftime and just turned the screws and played some playoff defense, which is what we like to see.
How much character does it show to be able to turn that around? Because that was a absolutely horrible first half that the Phoenix had. It was on their home floor.
Yep.
Their 26 points was their lowest halftime score in their history. Going to halftime, they only shot 25%. They had 8 turnovers. But to then turn it around, I mean, it was 59-30 in the second half. They only had 3 turnovers, so they handled the pressure better. I mean, Matt Hurt was great. He had 25 points, but it was the guys that were stepping up in the absence of Derek Walton. Like you said, it was Foxwell. Angus Glover had his moments. Ben Eyre comes out and hits 4 3-pointers. And I felt like even late in the first half, he was the reason they weren't 25 down because he hit a couple of threes that were really important. And then he ends up hitting the winner at the end with about a minute to go as well. Even Matt Kenyon comes on and plays an important role for 10 minutes to give Foxwell a bit of a break guarding Davis. They had guys playing selfless roles, and like we said, Adelaide had the opposite.
Yeah, complete opposite. No, look, when you got a guy like Angus Glover who has been there, done that, proven that he just can do what it takes to win a game and turn a game on its head, not necessarily bothering the score sheet.
Yep. He loves this time of year, doesn't he?
Does, and he thrives for it, and he's a big-time player that we've seen multiple times now. And I'm sure he was one of the guys from the playing group talking up at halftime, and it would have been very much a chip away at the score. It's not going to all happen in the first, 2 minutes, and we can't get it all back in the one possession. Yep. So just chipping away, and that's exactly what they did. Yep. I think you're right. The three-headed monster in Glover, Foxwell, and Eyre were unbelievable. They were, and we've seen it a couple times already this season, late in the season, where those three have done an unbelievable job of taking over what Derek Walton would be doing, and realistically, a lot better defensively. But also just sharing the load on the offensive end. Look, super impressive effort. I think that, like you said, Hurt was unreal. He made some just tough plays and proof why he was one of the finalists for MVP because he was just unbelievable. And to do this with, one of your marquee players in Nathan Sobey having a really strange game. And
he was scoreless going to halftime.
Couldn't find his own rhythm, just struggled to kind of get going and on both ends of the floor. Yep. Made a couple big plays though in that second half, but look, it was certainly a team effort and led by the three-headed monster.
Would you be nervous if you're the Hawks a little bit?
Yeah, look, I think that's probably not exactly. I think either of those teams I wouldn't exactly want to come up against, whether it was the Phoenix or the Sixers.
Yep.
So look, I'd be worried because Phoenix are rolling right now and they're playing well. You'd also got to go in with confidence because you finished the season on top. Yes. So I think on the flip side, the Hawks are a tough matchup for anyone.
Yep.
So again, it's going to be by committee for the Phoenix if they're going to get it done.
So Adelaide booked that spot against the Phoenix by winning the play-in qualifier back on Thursday night against the Kings. It was really tough to make a case for the Kings coming into this game just because obviously there was no Xavier Cooks and that was already on top of Kelly Le'Lepepe being out, and that just meant that Cam Oliver had to do a power of work basically as a lone soldier up against Isaac Humphries and Montrezl Harrell and even Jarrell Martin at times. And I mean, full credit to Cam Oliver because he did stand up. We've talked about it all season long about how hasn't been treated greatly, but he's taken everything as a man, and he played like a man in this game. He did everything he could to give Sydney a chance. Jalen Adams, I know his 9 turnovers don't look great on paper, but when he's the complete focus, he's the only one that can make a play on that team. I think it's understandable. So for him to finish with 30 points and 10 assists, he did all he could, but in the end, those two just didn't have enough help. Adelaide got the win that they should have got. Maybe it wasn't as comfortable as it perhaps should have been. So again, it was a little bit of a roller coaster performance from Adelaide, but did that game end up sort of how you expected?
Yeah, it did. It did. Kind of similar thing in this game. Adelaide coming out of halftime, just not ready to go. And Kings just outscoring them.
What was it? It was
30 to 18.
30 to 18 in the third quarter.
And that's, I mean, again, just kind of sums up Adelaide's season.
So does this. I mean, with the size advantage Adelaide have got, how do they lose the rebound count, and how do they give up 14 offensive rebounds to a team like Sydney that's virtually got one big?
Because you go in knowing that, and you know whether you are consciously thinking about it or it's in your subconscious, then you go into these games and that's usually how it goes. The bigger team usually gets out rebounded, and it's because they don't work hard to get after it. They just expect that because we're bigger, we'll get those boards, and it doesn't really ever work out like that. Because on the flip side, the team that looks like they're super undermanned size-wise for the boards, they fight a heck of a lot harder and, you know, get after it. And that's a big part of what rebounding is just the desire and want to get after the ball. So that doesn't surprise me in the slightest. But yeah, look, I think the game's finished a lot closer than I thought it would. I thought Adelaide probably should have won this by 20, you know. But you're right. I think, you know, Adams and Oliver being able to work together more than we've seen the rest of the season, almost combined, was fun. And yeah, you could just see Kings were just missing that one piece.
What did you make of the Adelaide celebrations? Both Montrez and DJ had a bit of fun with the Sydney crowd. Did you like it?
Oh, I mean, that's kind of, you knew Adelaide was going. You knew they were going to be up and about and raucous, but you know, DJ obviously has, you know, a bit of history and that kind of a thing, so not overly surprising. And then Montrez, I mean, he's done that the whole time he's been here, so it's just part of it.
Well, he did that start the very first game in Hoops Fest over here, didn't he?
He did. Look, I'm not the biggest fan of that kind of a thing, but it's kind of what, you know, that group has kind of adopted and become known for, really.
Are you a fan of the, maybe it's not Gatorade, it must be Powerade because we're sticking to our sponsors. Are you happy with the showers that the Adelaide players give during the post-match interviews?
No. Oh, it's like if someone comes out and has a big career night, then maybe, but no, not overly.
Is it a bit more like 12-year-old behaviour, or am I just showing my age?
Look, yes and no. It is what it is. I mean, they're having fun, which is good to see, and I think again, just something else that kind of sums up their season. In, you know, when they're winning, they're you know, so ecstatic to be around each other and celebrate each other. But
and then look what happens on Sunday in the second half.
Complete opposite. When they're losing, it's, you know,
I imagine some of those guys are unable to talk to each other right now after what happened in that second half.
Yeah, I think so. It's
like, could you imagine Trez and DJ sharing a beer right now?
Yeah, no, probably not. Probably not. But it's just such an odd dynamic group.
All right, we might come back to them because there's a bit to dissect at Adelaide. We might come back to them next week and when we talk about the eliminated teams. But let's go back to last Tuesday night. This was fascinating in so many ways. In the end, the Perth Wildcats beat the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix 122-105 to book in a playoff spot against Melbourne United. I said this to both Josh King and Jordan Hunter after the game. If you usually see a scoreline at the end of an NBL game, 122 to 105, you feel like you've watched an exciting game with lots of highlights and lots of big plays, and you feel like you've been treated to something special. This wasn't that, was it?
No, not at all. Not at all. And look, I expected this to be a lot lower scoring than it was. I thought it was, especially new rims for both teams and, new backdrops. I thought
this won't surprise you at all. And anyone that's been to Challenge Stadium, pre-game at the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix end, the rim was not the right height.
Shocker.
It interrupted their warm-up, and this happened, I reckon, at least 50% of every game I ever covered at Challenge Stadium. Yeah. And for whatever reason, it was never at the Wildcats end of the court. Yeah. Did you experience anything like this?
Oh yeah, I've certainly had before. But yeah, I mean, that was kind of what Challenge became known for, right? You know, so
that and the shot clock not working.
Yeah, exactly. There's a reason they moved out of there. Yeah. So. But yeah, look, it was just a slog and a grind and a tough watch and just an absolute foul fest. And it was just, I mean, not at all what a playoff game should be.
No. 55 fouls were called across the game. 77 free throws were taken. So we're virtually seeing a guy go to the foul line every single minute of the game. And I know Josh King's copped a lot of criticism for talking about the referees, but he never once said that it impacted the result of this game. He just felt like it impacted the enjoyability of the game for him to be part of, for his players to be part of, and for anybody watching. Yeah. Do you feel similar? Like we probably got the right result, but it wasn't a fun way to get there.
Yeah, no, Cats were the better team for sure. But it's just it's super frustrating seeing games like this. And it was a big issue early in the season. It was, and I feel like they started getting it closer to right towards the end of the season. There was a lot more physicality being allowed. And then this just went straight back to the first couple of rounds. And just frustrating watch. And you just, obviously, as spectators and fans watching, it's almost unwatchable.
It was, yeah.
But also for players, it's just, you just can't get into a rhythm. When you're stopping every second possession or every possession, it's just, like, I don't understand how that can constantly happen. It's frustrating.
The one area that did impact the result was the fact that Geordie Hunter couldn't stay on the court. He plays less than 13 minutes, and he's really the only rebounder on that Phoenix team. In the end, the Wildcats completely dominated the glass. I mean, just look at Keanu Pinder had 11 rebounds. Doolittle had 11. Windler had 9. They dominated the rebounding count. That ended up being a big factor on top of the foul count, obviously. Yeah, I mean, did it highlight a potential weakness for the Phoenix where they don't have a backup big because they refuse to play Majuk for whatever reason?
Yeah, look, I think that's something that's kind of been known. And, I mean, we saw that against Adelaide as well. They went super small ball.
Oh, Geordie got in foul trouble again early in that game.
Yeah, and they went super small ball. I think they had Matt Hurd out there with
Kenyon, I think, in the 4, really.
Yeah. So, but it's a tough one. It's something that is an issue for the Phoenix, and it doesn't help with their rebounding. I mean, Vodanovic comes out every now and then, but it's just he's one of those guys that hasn't found his way into proper minutes in the lineup, really, he kind of gets thrown out there every now and then.
Because Josh King is still trying to figure out how to pronounce his name.
Yeah, possibly. But look, Juk just doesn't play. He's about the only other one that's a big body out there, but I think he's probably that step behind now. So yeah, look, it's got to be frustrating for Geordie. I mean, he was the only one that really probably could have guarded Keanu, but Keanu's probably that bit too quick and athletic and does a really good job of getting into your body. And because he goes so hard and fast to the rim, it's tough to guard anyway. So, for the Phoenix to go far, Geordie needs to figure out how to stay out of foul trouble.
You mentioned Keanu. He likes playing against the Phoenix. I mean, he had that game at Hoops Fest to start the season, but that was all on the back of 3-point shooting. Yeah. This one was the opposite. He ends up with 35 points, 11 rebounds. He shot 11 of 13 from the field, and then he made all 10 of his free throws. Yep. The Wildcats were plus 35 with him out on the court. When he's playing like that and when he's aggressive, we talked about it before, they almost become an unstoppable team.
Yeah, Bryce is going to give you what Bryce does. We know what we're going to get from him. Doolittle's very similar. You know, he's going to give you real solid minutes. He's going to be on the boards and putting up points as well. Windler has been pretty good for them as well. Henny's been good for them, but I think for the Cats, if Keanu is playing like this, I don't know who can beat them.
Yeah.
And we saw it early where Keanu would have games like this and then go missing for 3-4 weeks.
Yes.
He can't afford to do that now.
No.
Just his aggressiveness to the rim has been just so impressive. And I think the games where he hasn't been effective are the ones where he's trying to stretch the floor and shoot those threes and just doesn't get himself into a rhythm. Those threes start going down once he's been to the foul line, once he's attacked the rim 4 or 5 times. Then all of a sudden, the bigs are helping off in the paint because they want to stop him there. That's when he's wide open on the wings and in that trail spot. And yeah, look, he's so important for that Cats team. I think, like I said, if he's playing like that, I mean, 35 and 11 is a super impressive night. If he's playing like that, I can't see them losing.
This was a tough game to judge a team on, but did you see enough in this game to suggest that Melbourne United is going to well and truly have their hands full?
Oh, they absolutely are. Yeah. And, you know, we've seen how good the Cats can be. And especially now that they've had a couple guys start to really find a bit of a rhythm. I think Windler, again, is one of those ones where, you know, he's starting to knock down some shots, and I feel like the further out he is, the more accurate he's been. But also just crashing the boards. I think he's been huge.
He flies over. He attacks the glass, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does, and that's why I really recruited him. He knew what he was getting out of that. So, you know, Ben Henschel has been really good in his minutes as well. I think he's just been super solid. And
Ty Webster adds another dynamic too, doesn't he?
Yeah, exactly. And again, when you put Ty in, it gets Bryce off the ball, and you know, he's able to come off those pin downs and turnouts like we talk about all the time. Yeah, look, this Cats team is a handful. When they're all playing the way they have been recently, they're a handful.
Last thing on this game, for all of the talk about how upset the Red Army was about having to go to the Perth High Performance Centre and not having enough spots in the building for their 11,000 members, what do you make of the fact that only 2,975 people went to the game, which meant that there was 1,500 spare seats in that stadium? What is that a protest vote that they didn't want to go there, or how do you make sense of that?
Well, from what I was reading, it sounded like the ticketing system just stuffed up.
Yeah,
again. I heard, I think it was Ticket Tech just...
And they usually go through, and I think they usually go through Ticketmaster, but to go to this stadium for a one-off game, they had to go through Ticket Tech.
Yeah, so...
Or it might have been vice versa, whichever. Yeah.
So I believe, and there's, again, I'm not 100% sure, because I don't think there'd be that many people not going out to protest.
Yeah.
And again, it's something that it couldn't be helped.
No.
It was not like... it's not like they chose to do this, so I don't think that would be the case at all. But it sounded like, I think up behind the rims.
Yep, at both ends. The top level was virtually completely empty.
Yeah, from what I'd heard on the website, it said that those sections were sold out when they weren't. So, yeah, I don't know whether it was just because of the flooding of the website from all the people and it just kind of crashed it a bit or what happened. But... I mean, that's what I read. So, which is frustrating. I'm sure it's frustrating because Challenge is, it's similar to, the WEC in Wollongong or, down in Tassie. Those smaller stadiums, up in Cairns, those smaller stadiums that get loud and rowdy.
It was still loud, even though there was only 3,000 there, it was still loud.
Yeah, and imagine another 1,500 people there. So it's a frustrating one, obviously, and the whole situation in general was just frustrating for everyone involved and everyone trying to be involved. But, look, it's I don't think we'll have these issues again now that they'll be able to go back to...
No, I can't imagine them letting this happen again.
No, absolutely not. I think Mark Arena will be all over this moving forward.
Yes. All right, Cody, that's the play-in tournament done. When we come back, a couple of things to wrap up. We'll get your thoughts on the awards. We'll talk about Adam Forde leaving the Taipans and then look ahead to next week.
Yeah, sounds good.
Can you picture the first goal before the ball has even bounced? Can you read the footy future in the mullet of a full forward? You've got the touch. Got the touch? Download the Tab Touch app today.
You win some, you lose more.
Okay, back on Hoop 7's Basketball Hustle. Last segment for this week. I'm here with Cody Ellis. We'll get to our preview of the playoff series next week, Cody, and do a full preview of, obviously, Melbourne United against the Perth Wildcats and the Illawarra Hawks against the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix. But bit of news around the teams that are now eliminated. Firstly, the Cairns Taipans. Adam Forde has now confirmed that he's moving on from the Cairns Taipans, at least as the head coach. He's still going to take a remote role, but I feel like reading between the lines, he's got a coaching job of some sort overseas, and he's still going to be helping out the Taipans where he can from there. So him and his family will be going on a new adventure. 4 years at the Taipans, and we've said it a lot on this show. Given the lack of resources they've got, they are not fighting an even battle against the other 9 teams in the competition, and I think he's done as well as anybody possibly could. He had one great season record-wise back in 22-23 where he was Coach of the Year and got them within one game of a grand final series, wasn't it, when they lost to Sydney in that series? Firstly, your reaction to him moving on, and how do you sum up his 4 years?
Look, not overly surprised. We spoke about it a little bit a few weeks ago when they were really struggling, and then, of course, after we said that, they came out and beat the Hawks, and the Cats.
And the Wildcats, yes.
But yeah, look, I think that, he's done a great job, and I don't think there's really too many other coaches that would have got out what he did from the teams that he had put together. Because you're right, it's not an even playing field, and usually the regional teams are the ones that suffer, and Cairns have been for a little while now, unfortunately. But look, he's obviously got a gig lined up somewhere. I'd probably Japan or something like that.
Yep.
Which is awesome for him. I think a bit of a fresh start would be great.
Yeah.
But it's got to be a frustrating one for him, and to kind of finish on this bit of a sour season, and didn't really have all these players fit and healthy for the season, and not much he can do about that, unfortunately. So, no, look, it isn't surprising. It isn't surprising at all.
Really interesting what path they go to replace him. So I feel like Kerry Williams has been groomed to be the next coach at the Taipans, and I feel like he's the logical choice. But this is a tricky job because you can't just be a head coach and come in and coach a group of 12 players. You have to be a development coach to coach this team, and you have to be somebody that comes from left field a little bit, because you've got to get the best out of a playing group that isn't as talented as the teams that you're playing against. So I feel like you need to have that little bit of a difference in you as a coach. You can't be just a normal head coach, if you know what I mean. So does anyone spring to mind who you think, or the type of coach that they need? Yeah,
they could go a couple different routes in this, and you're right, Kerry Williams is probably the one that would spring to mind straight away, and probably deserving to get that job. But if you look, within the league, you got Sammy Mack, who has proven that, he can do the job well. And I'm sure they're probably going to reach out to him as well. But Jacob Chance is probably the other one that really springs to mind. They're probably the two that spring to mind first for me. Chance has been around the league for some time now, and just working his way up the ladder, and has been a big part of what United's done as well. And he's been, under Dean Vickerman for a couple of years now, and
coaching the Boomers this week.
The Boomers this week, exactly. So he's starting to really build a pretty good resume to stick his hand up for a head coaching role. Yeah. But yeah, look, it's going to be interesting to see which way they go if they do that, because again, I'm sure they don't have the same funds as everyone for the coaching staff either. So it's going to be one of those things that they might reach out to 4 or 5 different coaches that knock it back, knowing everything involved and what has to happen up in Cairns, without playing on that even playing field like we spoke about. So not really sure what they'll do. Couple good names around the league that they can certainly headhunt and go after if they don't give it to Kerry.
Yep.
But it's you're right. They've got whoever takes it on has got a lot on their plate.
A couple of guys retired. We touched on them at the start. Were you surprised with Clint Steindl, first of all? Because probably 3 weeks ago, Scott Roth made a pretty impassioned plea saying that he really wants Clint to come back this year. And last week, Clint talked about how he went into his office and Scott was asking him, okay, so what are your thoughts on next year? And Clint told him that this is the way he's going. And Scott was pretty shocked from all reports. But, you know, it's been a great career. And 356 games, started up in Cairns and Townsville. And then when the Crocs folded, he didn't find a home for another 12 months. So there was a chance he never found his way back into the NBL, but he's ended up back at the Wildcats where he won 2 championships, and then he's been the only captain for the Jack Jumpers, including in the championship. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, look, heck of a career. I think that, you know, I was not overly surprised when I heard it. It is a tough one, kind of playing the role he's playing now, and while he's mainly there for his leadership and that kind of a thing, you know, he still comes in for little stints here and there to just be that sniper that he is. But, you know, you've got to think he's still out there every single day at practice and grinding away at training, and then not being able to play the minutes that he probably wants or thinks is really worth it at the moment. Sure. And, you know, again, that's not because he's, you know, it's nothing from him. It's just the fact that that's just how his role has evolved with the Jack Jumpers. And look, he's been an unbelievable leader for them. I think he's been, you know, the perfect captain for them, and you know, since the start. Yep. And then, yeah, look, I mean, 356 games is a lot of games. That's a lot of games, and you know, he's been part of some pretty successful teams, and he's been a big reason why they've been successful. So it's cool to see that he's hanging them up, and yeah, look, obviously a massive congrats on a heck of a career. Then
there's Jason Cadee, 424 games in the end, and the happiest about Jason for me is that I remember talking to him before he even played his very first game. We did an interview when I was doing a show with Jesse Wagstaff back on Sport FM back 15 years ago or whenever it was. Before he played that first game in Gold Coast, he was still recovering from his car accident. So the fact that he's now been able to play 424 games and now retires on his terms. So he could play on if he wanted to. I'm sure he'd get another contract in Adelaide or somewhere else if he wanted to, but he wants to move on to the next phase of his life. So I'm happy that it was a career that almost didn't start because of that accident. He's now been able to have the whole career that he wanted, and he now goes out on his terms. That's almost perfect.
Oh, mate, I was super happy when I saw his announcement and the fact that, like you said, he could go out on his own terms. Jace was always one of my favourite teammates, one of the best people going around. I think that, you know, the fact that he can say that he's played 424 NBL games after, you know, being told he may not even walk properly again is super impressive. And it's, you know, you kind of saw the emotions flood after the game when it was all over for them. And look, probably he didn't deserve to go out the way that Adelaide bowed out, unfortunately, but it had to happen in some fashion. And
they're still playing good basketball right in his very last game, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And again, very much like Clint, like Jace is a great leader. He's one of those culture guys that you want in and around your team, and one of those guys that kind of gets everyone on the same page and helps to do that because you know, he's been there, done that. He's represented Australia and, you know, represented each of these clubs so well. And like I said, one of my favourite teammates that I've ever had, and one of the best people going around.
He doesn't want to go immediately into coaching, but he does feel like eventually he'll end up being a coach. Is he one of the teammates that you've had that would just be the most natural to be a coach one day?
Yeah, I think so. He understands and reads the game so well. And being a point guard, he had to kind of figure that out. So yeah, look, that's not overly surprising. I'm sure a little bit of time away from the game would be great for him, and he'll hit the ground running once he does want to step into a role.
All right, Cody, we thought this hour might go very quickly. Let's very quickly run through the award winners, and you can give me your quick reaction to each one, and if they got it right, and then we'll wrap up this week's show. So, Bryce Cotton as the MVP.
Yeah, I mean, we don't even need to touch on that one, I don't think.
I don't think you need to say much about Justin Tatum as coach of the year either. That was a no-brainer, wasn't it?
Yep, absolutely.
Most improved play is where it gets interesting. I still think Taron Armstrong unlucky not to even be nominated, but it ended up being very close in the voting. So Tyrell Harrison got the nod, Owen Foxwell second, Ben Henschel third.
Yeah, look, I think all three of those guys have been really impressive this year.
Sure.
I mean, Harrison was my pick at the start of the year.
And I think if Harrison plays the whole season, he's a clear winner.
Yeah, absolutely. And the reason I didn't have him there in my end of season predictions was I didn't think he had played enough games.
Yeah,
I thought
yeah.
Guys like Owen and Henny had
played the whole season,
and been super impactful. So I think it just proves how good he was when he was playing. So I'm not overly surprised.
Courtney, the best six man, self-anointed best six man, but I was surprised Davo Hickey ended up so far behind in the votes.
Yeah, look, I think the thing with Hickey is he doesn't overly bother the scoreboard sometimes.
These numbers don't stand out, but his impact does.
Oh, it absolutely does. But, I think that sometimes that's where guys like that don't win these kinds of awards because, Kawat has been, he was their main scorer for most of the season. And
especially
he was
the second half of the year.
Well, that's it. And he was their most consistent scorer.
Yeah.
He was one of those guys that won Sydney games late in the season. And, I think Hickey, he does a lot of the little things for the Hawks and stuff that doesn't show up on the stat sheet, which sometimes just goes a little unnoticed in these kinds of awards.
Best defensive player, the Damien Martin Trophy.
Yeah.
Shea Ili won. Wani Swaka was second. Are you surprised in the pretty big margin between the two?
It is a big margin, but I think similar in with the six man. I think Shea is so dominant on ball.
Yep. He's a match winner, isn't he?
He is, exactly. And Wani did a great job this year, I think, of being disruptive and doing a lot of things off the ball.
Yes.
Being naggy and just kind of being up and in. And we saw it when they played Kings and him and Jalen Adams got into it.
Yes.
And I think that's kind of how Wani affected the play this year. But Shea just far and away the best defender in the league by a long stretch anyway. So
Next Gen Award. This one's interesting and pretty close in the voting. Alex Tui, 46 votes. Ben Henschel, who was 40. Taron Armstrong, 38. Are you pretty happy?
Yeah, look, this is a weird one because I feel like Tui, while had some just great games and put the team on his back, had some other games where he played only a handful of minutes and didn't really do much. And, you look at Taron, he was great for a patch, but then he was hurt for a while as well.
But when he played, it was his team in Cairns, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was for sure. But we also saw games where he was super average.
Yes.
And then once he went out, Cairns actually went on a roll.
They did, yes.
So it's a weird one.
Well, they won those two games against the Hawks, the Wildcats, without him, didn't they?
So,
Yes.
and again, he missed a chunk of time, which
I think he only played 19 games.
which I think needs to actually play a role in these kinds of awards, which, we have seen it does for a lot of them. For me, I thought Henschel's been the best and probably, but again, not as consistent either. Like, not overly consistent. I think that any three of those guys could have won it, and they'd all have a fairly strong case to have won it as well. Tui just, his ceiling is so high.
Yes.
He's going to be pretty good, and I think once he gets his consistency up, then he'll be legitimate.
Do all three of them play in the NBA within the next year or two?
It's a tough one. That is a tough one. I think an NBA team will own their rights within the next couple of years. Whether they actually make it over there in the next year or so, I don't think so.
Okay.
But I believe that their rights will be owned by an NBA team of some description.
All first team was Bryce Cotton, Kendrick Davis, Matt Hurt, Trey Cal, Tyler Harvey. The all second team, Casey Prather, Chris Golding, Montrezl Harrell, Sam Froling, Xavier Cooks. You can mix around the 10 players, but do you feel like they got the 10 players right?
Yeah, I think so. That is a pretty smack on.
The one they didn't have that you had Jalen Adams and you didn't have Tyler Harvey.
I didn't have Tyler, And look, the reason for that was I didn't think they'd have three guys from the one team in it.
Yeah.
So not the least bit surprising to see all three of Kel, Harvey and Froling in there. They've been just unbelievable for the Hawks all season. So, but the rest of those guys all very well deserving.
3-pointer of the year went to Tyler Robertson, Cody. I honestly, I haven't seen the highlight of this still since, and I can't remember what the shot was.
Yeah, there was that full 3/4 court shot. I believe.
Yeah. How did Chris Golding's game winner against the Breakers not win?
Yeah, I don't know. But also, if you're going to have a 3-pointer of the year, why is there not a dunk of the year, a block of the year? Like,
Yep.
can we
No.
have some sort of awards like this? That's fine, but
Well, is a dunk not the greatest highlight in the game?
yeah, exactly.
Yes.
You know, but even blocks, you
Yeah.
know,
Oh, yeah.
I think, yeah, I
Okay.
don't know. I don't know, but yeah, I agree that Goulding's 3 should have, because it was for an actual game winner.
Yeah, but as Simon says, when in doubt, always go for the Sydney player, Cody. And well done to Simon for his tips. The only one out of the entire predictions that he didn't have Montrezl Harrell in his first or second team.
Yeah.
He completely ran the field on every other award winner. So well done to Simon, and enjoy your Southeast Melbourne Phoenix being in the playoffs now as well, Simon. We'll stay in touch. Gee, Cody, we ended up going overtime. So we've got a lot to still talk about next week. We'll do a preview of the playoff series and then catch up on everything else. But for now, that's it for this week. Thank you to Tap Touch and Hoop 7. I'm Chris Pike, and I'll leave you with the final word, Cody.
Yeah, look, it'll be nice to sit back and take a couple breaths because it's been a lot going on in the past couple of weeks. So, yeah, hopefully everyone enjoys a little bit of a break.
Can you picture the first goal before the ball's even bounced? You might have the touch. When the weather's wet, can you feel who'll triumph? You've got the power. Can you read the footy future in the mullet of a full forward? Then you too might be harnessing the power of the touch. Got the touch? Download the Tab Touch app today.
You win some, you lose more. For free and confidential support, call 1-800-858-858 or visit gamblinghelponline.org.au.